I saw a lady sneeze without covering today, and if she's listening to this, you're just the worst kind of person.
Welcome back to Potions Class. Hello and welcome to Potions Class, where we do the deep dive on critical scientific topics for you to enjoy over your morning coffee. I am your host, Elliot Lowe, and today I am joined on this dreary Sunday afternoon by amateur card collector Joseph Ennis. How are you doing today, Joe?
Good. Wow.
Yeah, that was fantastic. I'm also joined today by the only NASCAR fan in the state of I'm also joined today by the only NASCAR fan in the state of Maryland, Eric Harris. Eric, how is NASCAR doing in light of all of this coronavirus outbreak?
Races are postponed for 2 weeks.
So they're playing video games instead.
Yeah, the future is now.
They actually are, though.
Yeah, they actually did. They just ended it.
So what was it exactly that they did?
A bunch of drivers did a race called the Replacements 100.
It's like the
It was only
Expendables.
100 miles?
It was 100 laps, actually. It was kind of
really?
weird.
If you're interested in hearing more about that, be sure to check out The Outside Line. Eric hosts that, and I think you're having an episode on kind of coronavirus implications of NASCAR, correct?
Yeah, we're cashing in.
Go and check out The Outside Line for that. So, as a quick update, wow, dang. We were not going to do another coronavirus episode.
No,
we
we
were
weren't.
actually going to move on to our next series, but due to just so much
So much is unfolded.
so much has unfolded in the past week.
Getting
It's been
bigger and bigger.
absolutely nuts. So since the last episode, on a global scale, we have 156,400 infections. That's an increase of 46,000 since last week. Since our last episode. Our last episode, we were at 34,000 infection. Now we're at 156,400. Deaths, we are at 5,833 worldwide. That's an increase of 2,000 deaths within the week. And then we are now at 73,968 recoveries. So that's on the global scale. There's been a ton of developments, particularly in Europe, Italy, Spain, France, Germany, and Switzerland, among a couple other countries, have announced over 1,000 infections within a 24-hour period. And I think we are now officially, according to, I checked the Johns Hopkins dashboard not too long ago, we are officially at more infections outside of mainland China than within it. So,
Oh, dang.
Yeah, so we've officially crossed that threshold. At this point, what that's saying, though, is we've officially broken out of kind of the quarantine phase. We're seeing more and more infections just on a global scale. In particular, I'm sure you've seen headlines. Italy has been hit incredibly hard. Over the past 24 hours.
Yeah, Italy's getting boned.
Over the past 24 hours, we've seen a 17% infection increase. They're now at 24,747 infections. And it has been, yesterday was the deadliest day for coronavirus in any country, in particular. Italy now taking over China for the most amount of deaths in one day. They had 252 deaths in Lombardy alone in the past 24 hours. So that does exceed the highest single day in China. Italy, our thoughts are with you now. They've got 1,809 deaths, 368 in the past 24 hours. That marks a 25% increase. Some developments in Italy. If you're unfamiliar with kind of the story over there, the first case was February 20th, a 38-year-old man in Lombardy. Lombardy? Is that how you pronounce that?
I said Lombardy.
Yeah, Vince Lombardi. Lombardi's Pizza.
They have a town named after Vince Lombardi.
Flavio Riccardo, who is a doctor, I think he's a part of the infectious diseases department at the NIH of Italy, says that he believes that the virus had actually been circulating a lot longer before that first case. He believes that it had been around before February 20th. That's when the first infection was recorded. But, it's the nature of this disease we've talked a lot about is just going unnoticed for a long time. And then once the incubation period is kind of done, we see a huge spike in infection rates. So they're on government lockdown right now. They've been in lockdown for about a week. Those who are caught breaking the lockdown are being charged with an American equivalent of $234 fine or 3 months in jail.
Dang.
So they are they're having a heavy crackdown on this. But I mean, there's good reason for it, particularly in northern Italy. Their health system is getting pretty close to collapse. They've only got 15 to 20 beds left at the time of me doing this research earlier today for critical care beds that are available. So our thoughts are with everyone in Italy. Again, some things that might say why Italy has had so bad of an outbreak is they have a high population age, over 65. There's a lot of people in Italy who are over the age of 65, and particularly in northern Italy, they have some of the cities up there have higher pollution rates than some other cities within England in general. So, I mean, looking at Italy, they've got a 22.75% population that is over the age of 65. And they've got about, on average, 197 people per square kilometer. So when we're looking at the U.S., I think we can learn things from Italy. And one thing in particular that we need to be on the lookout for is states that have high population age. So looking at some state demographics, I think Maine's going to have to be careful. They've got a population of over 65, percentage of 20.6, Florida 20.5. West Virginia has recorded no cases to date, but they're the only state within the U.S. All other 49 states.
Yeah, but West Virginians can't read, so they're not reading the test properly. Shots fired. I was born in West Virginia, so I can say that.
They've got a 19.9% population age over 65. Vermont is 19.4, and Delaware is number 5 at 18.7. Some other things that we have to look at is population density. So DC is going to be by far the most densely populated, quote unquote, state district. They've got an average of 4,088 people per square kilometer. Jersey's number 2 at 467. Rhode Island, 3rd at 407. And then it's going to be Massachusetts, 331.3 people, and Connecticut at 286.
And we're recording this on Sunday, 6:45, March 15th. So that's as of that time.
It's been tricky to actually do research on this because even throughout the day, as I've been trying to collect information, stuff just keeps changing.
Yeah, it just keeps changing.
So me and Joe just watched the White House
Jojo
response
Rabbit.
team. Oh, we did watch Jojo Rabbit.
That was
yesterday.
a great movie.
It was a great movie.
It made me think that nothing was wrong with the world.
But we watched that. Do you have any thoughts in particular on some of the developments from that, Joe?
Yeah, I thought the movie was good. Hitler was very well portrayed. I'm kidding.
Taika Waititi.
Taika Waititi did a great job. Yeah, no, it didn't seem like they were kind of vague, but it seems like they're kind of just like business as usual, which to some might be a good thing. It might be a fine thing, and to some might not be a good thing. Personally, I think the world shouldn't be hearing that right now because no one really seems to be listening to anything that they should be doing when it comes to like yesterday was St. Patrick's Day and like half the world was out last night and everybody was like, maybe don't
Patient
do
31.
that.
Patient 31 is our mascot.
Patient 31 was the woman from South Korea.
Yeah, that spread it to like 80% of the current cases.
That was the Corona cult. Go
Oh, that was
listen
the cult lady.
Oh, that was it?
Yeah, that's Corona
Oh
cult.
my
Yeah,
god.
wow.
If you want to hear more about the Corona cult, go listen to episode 3. On a more serious note, something that we have been seeing a lot, in particular on social media and particularly on young people, is just a general disregard for the seriousness of this issue. And something that we do like to do on this podcast is we definitely don't like to incite fear. That's something that we've talked a lot about as we're looking at a lot of these developments. We know that it's very easy to panic. In particular, there's been a lot of mass buying at grocery stores. I think that was one good thing that the president did bring up today and kind of reiterated was,
You don't have to buy the store out.
yes, don't necessarily go and stockpile things that you don't need. Be thoughtful about what you and your family need in the coming week, but by week to week, the grocery stores, there's going to be an effort to keep those open. Even in places like Italy where we're having these huge lockdowns, like they are making efforts to allow people to get groceries and to live their daily lives. So be aware of that. Be aware that like if you go and buy out a grocery store and you are stockpiling, you are making it very difficult to, one, resupply those stores. You're putting a lot of strain on the people working on those stores, and people are going to continue to need provisions. And if you're buying out everything from the stores, then it's just going to make it more difficult. So we're all in this together. So let's be thoughtful citizens. Let's just don't panic, but take care, be very safe. And honestly, something that I think we need to kind of hit on the head here, and it's going to come across as somewhat abrasive, but don't go out. Honestly, don't. It's incredibly selfish.
It's cheaper to drink at home anyway.
It's true.
Just have a group of no more than 5 people. You're chilling.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem like people need to take this seriously, but not panic. Like there's a middle ground between panicking and taking it seriously and not panicking at all and going out and not taking it seriously at all.
We do recognize that for a lot of listeners and a lot of people in general, self-quarantine isn't something that they're used to, but there are populations within the U.S. that this is something that's not new. There are individuals within this country who do have health conditions that make this a more regular occurrence for them. When there is a flu season or when there are epidemics in local areas, self-quarantine is something that people are used to. So please don't make this seem like it's the worst thing in the world, because there's a lot of people that do deal with this on a daily basis.
Yeah, and the other thing is, you're not necessarily self-quarantining for yourself. You're self-quarantining so that people around you do not get sick, specifically older people that are very much more vulnerable to it. Because I think a lot of people are like, I don't need to self-quarantine because I'm not sick. I don't have coronavirus. Or maybe they're just like, I'll be fine. It's just like a cough. And it's like, that's not the point.
There are a lot of people that are not going to be okay.
Yeah.
And by choosing to actively not participate in what everyone should be doing in just not even self-quarantining to like a 100% degree, not necessarily isolating yourself 100% from society, but not even taking precaution to not congregate at bars. DC is doing a great thing today. They actually
I saw that.
just announced that they are going to be having some pretty strict regulations on just bars in particular. So they're limiting gathering. You can't sit at a bar now. The DC Metro itself is going to be slowing down.
Has always been slow.
Yes, but as Anthony Fauci was pointing out today, over the next couple days, over the next week, we're going to be rolling out more and more of these types of things as we see the numbers increase.
This is smart because there's no way, like, the U.S. is a very, like, culturally, we're a very resistant group of people. So if they just decided we're going to quarantine everything starting tomorrow, nobody would listen to it.
Yes.
So the vast majority of people would not listen to it because they're idiots. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
But if we were like, okay, we're going to lower gathering amounts, we're going to slow down public transit, and then ultimately, and with companies shutting down anyway, they're going to say, okay, well, companies are going to shut down except for like grocery stores or like maybe a cafe or some shit.
A nice story that I heard today, which was cool, and I was happy to hear it, which I told Elliot already, but I don't know if you saw it, Eric. And Pizza is giving free pizza to all hospital workers, and if you can't come pick it up because you're too busy, they'll even deliver it to you for free. And they're giving all of their employees free pizza, unlimited pizza, and they're shutting down all of their corporate buildings, and all of the corporate workers are going to be working in the stores, which is super cool.
And they're adding a lot of benefits to their...
Yeah, everyone's getting $1 raise.
I actually was like, sounds like a nice place to work.
Well, yeah, everyone's getting $1 raise if you come in contact with someone that has corona and you think, and they tell you, or if you think you have corona yourself, you get 2 weeks paid sick leave. They're killing it right now. But that was just kind of a happy story I heard of.
So there are highlights, and I think it's important that we, one, point out the good statistics, that we point out the things that are going well, and that we also highlight people in our community. I've seen so many people in the community being like, if you are elderly or at risk, let me help. Like, I've seen so many posts on Facebook, people being like, hey, if you need help, let me know. And that's what we really need to do.
Cool.
And that's what's really going to set us apart as kind of communities as this continues to go on, is having a sense of kindness for one another, and having a sense of awareness. And I do have to reiterate again that if you are continuing to go out and disregard the fact that there are at-risk populations and not take into that account, it is incredibly selfish.
Yeah.
It does not matter if you are going to be okay. That is not the point of this quarantine.
Yeah.
Or not of this quarantine, but of self-isolation. That is not the point of social distancing. So these are all important things that I think that we need to be talking about. And in particular, I think it's important that we talk about this whole idea that everyone's probably been seeing in the news of flattening the curve. I think there's some misconception on what that means. So the way that I'm going to explain this is by walking through week by week periods and showing the number of infections. So January 14th, we had 0. A week later, we had 1. A week later, we had 5. A week later, we had 11. A week later, 14. A week later, 25. A week later, 59. Now into March 3rd, 125. March 10th, 1,004. March 15th, 2,800.
And this is
That's
in the US?
today. This is just in the US. So what we're seeing is these exponential increases. And it's going to continue to go like this until we hit a peak. And that's what when we're looking at that curve, we're looking at the number of infections growing. And then as that number continues to go up and people recover, then we see people who are now immune. And then as that curve kind of levels off and goes down, we're going to see a increased number of people who are now immune or resistant and a decreased number of daily infections. But the issue is that underneath that curve, there's a large percentage of people who are going to need hospitalization. And within the US, we have limited resources. For example, we only have 6,146 hospitals in the US. We only have 927 staffed beds. So we've got regular beds in the US, and then we have these ICU beds. And these ICU beds are going to be very important to making sure that individuals who are severely ill get the care that they need. So compared to like a normal hospital bed, they're going to have bedside radiology exams, respiration support, organ support. They're X-ray and radiation resistant. That way, if they need to have additional testing done, they don't have to leave for the bed. That's going to be really important, especially as older people are coming in with these severe these severe symptoms. And when we look at countries like Italy and northern Italy, they're being absolutely devastated by this influx of sick people. So it doesn't really matter whether or not you are going to be okay by continuing to propagate the virus, by not taking the necessary steps in order to limit the spread. What you are going to do is spike that curve and just realize at a certain point that curve is going to hit a line, and that line is going to be our healthcare capacity. And as soon as we start passing that, it's going to be really hard to get these people into the hospital. And then if you have another injury or another sickness, realize that coronavirus is additive.
Yeah.
We still are dealing with influenza. We still are dealing with the common cold. We are still dealing with people just getting injured on a daily basis. And when you drain all of the healthcare of all of its resources and you take up all of the doctor's time, then it's going to be very difficult in order to give people the care that they need. Like in Italy, I believe there's some controversy and some issues rising where if people are over the age of 80, they just aren't going to get the care because there are people that are younger that need it more. So we don't want to reach a point where we have to pick and choose who we can give care to. We want to make sure that everybody who is sick that needs care can get it. And I think this is something that it's very important that they've been saying about these tests, where if you don't need to get the test because you're of a healthy age, just self-isolate. Keep yourself at home. Be sure that you're drinking fluids, but most people are going to be okay. If you continue to go out into the just general population, you're just going to keep spreading this virus, and we're going to have a much steeper curve.
It's just going to get worse.
Yes. Something that I've been seeing from a lot of people is like, this is just like the flu. It's not. This is not just like the flu. Again, it's something that I think we need to point out, that this is an additive disease. This is adding a new disease to the population on top of the flu. This is not just a subset of the flu. When we look at the R0 value, and what that stands for is essentially the replication rate. So if you have an R0 value below 1, that means for every person that contracts the virus, they spread it to less than one person. Mm-hmm. When that happens, you have a disease that dies out very fast. If you have an R0 value of about 1, that means for every person that catches it, one other person catches it. Those are usually,
that's pretty bad.
They die. No, those die out as well, usually, because they're not exponential.
Oh, sure. Okay.
They're linear. So every one person gives. So usually what ends up happening,
eventually it's going to stop.
Well, eventually what happens is people recognize that they have it, and so then they quarantine. So it's much easier to deal with. When we look at something like the 1918 influenza, which was absolutely devastating. I mean, that was to date the worst pandemic that we have ever seen. It was absolutely horrible. Looking at the 1918 influenza, there were 1.8 to 1.9 billion infections and 17 million to 50 million deaths. And that number has been estimated to potentially be upwards of 100 million. So some important things that I think is important to talk about is we probably won't see those types of numbers due to a couple different factors. One, this was a long time ago. It was before antibiotics. Right. So something that can happen in particular with respiratory diseases is you get that initial viral infection, but as the complications occur, you can also get bacterial infection. And when you don't have the ability to treat it with an antibiotic, those secondary infections can be a lot worse. So thankfully, due to modern medicine, we do have a lot of antibiotics, and so we're going to see that number go down a lot. On top of that, we do have vaccines that can be developed at a quicker rate. So as long as we can slow this curve, have the infection spread at a slower rate, there's a potential that we can introduce a vaccine before we hit a peak. I don't know how likely that is at this case, but in looking at R0 values, and again, those are going to be the replication rates, the influenza in 1918, which devastated the world, had a R0 value of 2.3. So for every person that got it, essentially about 2.3. Yes. What is complicated about COVID-19 and this new novel coronavirus is that we don't necessarily have all the facts yet. It's so new and it's so emerging. And I mean, thank you to all of the researchers and healthcare workers who are working around the clock in order to figure out what is going on. But right now, the R0 value is predicted to be somewhere between 1.4 and 3.9. And that's a huge,
good Lord,
huge difference. So the reality is that we do not know everything about this virus. So if you're seeing people online saying that it's just like the flu or I know all the facts, they don't. They don't know all the facts. Nobody knows all the facts, and we're trying to figure it out right now. So it is imperative that we do everything that we can to try to slow the virus. So for people who may not be familiar with some of the symptoms, they range from mild to serious. Mild symptoms include fever, cough, and shortness of breath, fever being one of the most prominent. But there can be serious symptoms such as pneumonia and shock. And a lot of times this is what's going to end up being lethal for a lot of people. It targets primarily people over the age of 65 and healthcare workers who are often exposed to this virus. Some other just things that I've seen is a lot of people are just saying, well, just like the flu, it's going to die off once the warm weather comes about. And that's something that's very different about influenza in particular. We know a lot about the flu. It's been around for a long time. And that's something that Fauci has pointed out several times as people have been trying to compare it to the flu, saying we know how it works. Yes, it's devastating. Yes, it has a lot of bad effects. But at the same time, we know what to expect. We know that winter has more cases. That's why we vaccinate in the fall. We know that in the warmer seasons, that it's going to die off a little bit. We don't know that about the coronavirus. And people who are making those assumptions are making them prior to having all the data. The reality is that the coronavirus is still thriving in warmer places like Australia and New Zealand. So we need to be aware that that might not be the case. A second thing that we need to be worried about is that this could become something that's seasonal. So in months where it is going to spread and be a lot more deadly in the northern hemisphere, we might not see it as much in the southern hemisphere. But as the seasons kind of change and the year goes on, what we can see actually is a swap, and we can get a cycle. And when that happens, what you have is essentially the circulation, moving northern hemisphere to southern hemisphere, then southern hemisphere to northern hemisphere, and that's how we get these seasonal viruses. We have a flu that comes around every year. We have a flu season. The coronavirus is not the flu. It is its own thing. And if it becomes seasonal, it's going to be an additive disease. That means that we're going to have the influenza virus and this coronavirus that happen regularly.
Oh, can you imagine 2 shots? That'd be the worst.
That's hard enough to get people to take one.
Yeah, seriously.
So this is when you're hearing people talk about how the coronavirus is just like the flu, that's blatantly a lie. Don't listen to them. It's not true. Look at the facts. Look at the figures. All of the information is available. Look on the CDC's website. Look at the World Health Organization. Don't look at what Grandpa Tom or Uncle Joe put on Facebook, because the reality is that might not be valid information. We're seeing a ton of misinformation stem, and that's where a lot of this fear comes from. We see things even like, I saw some myth about 5G.
Oh, yeah, it's the 5G causing it.
It's just the 5G towers. Yeah, there's this.
Well, there was that 5G story where the first 5G tower went up in Germany, and all of the birds within like 2 miles of it just dropped dead.
Did that actually happen?
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like radiation or something, maybe.
Probably. They probably just, something was wrong with it. But like, it was like the day they put it up, within the week, like all the birds within 2 miles of it died.
Sounds like the bird flew.
That was the worst I've ever heard. That sucked. That was so bad.
So I think this is kind of an important thing for people to know is, and I've gotten a lot of questions about this, is viral survivability. So when you cough or sneeze on some surface, how long does the virus actually survive? How long can it spread?
5-second rule.
5-second rule? It's actually a little bit more than that.
Oh.
It could be multiple days.
Multiple day rule? So you could drop Oh,
No.
wait, no, that's a completely different thing.
You could drop a sandwich on the ground and eat it 5 days
Leave
later,
it there for 5 days.
and you will not contract the
2
coronavirus.
weeks. 2-week incubation period. Put a sandwich on the ground. 2 weeks before coronavirus on that sandwich.
Can we get that? Can we get that thrown into the false news circulation?
No, we're not trying to spread fake news. We're going to cure fake news.
Yes, that is what we are here to do. We are here to alleviate the burden of fake news and paranoia. So some different numbers on that. Plastic and stainless steel, it can survive on that surface for about 70 hours is what it looks like at this point. And cardboard is a little bit less, 24 hours. Another thing that I saw,
Live in cardboard houses.
live in cardboard houses. Cardboard houses are safer than stainless steel
I
houses.
need to invest in big cardboard.
Invest in big cardboard.
God. You're just full of zingers today.
I'm not a
huh?
financial advisor.
Yeah, clearly not.
Another thing that I did see is that a lot of people are ignoring the fact that their phone is essentially a third hand. Be very careful in wiping down your phone. I mean, you're talking into your phone. People pick up people's phones. You touch your phone, hand your phone to someone, and they touch their face.
Wash your phone with soap and water.
Wash your phone with...
Don't do that.
Seriously, wipe that down with above 60% alcohol. Another thing to consider is that washing your hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. We're going to call it
2
safe.
birthdays.
We'll say 20 minutes.
2 birthdays. 20 minutes?
No, no, I'm kidding.
What?
20. Wash your hands with soap and water for 20 minutes.
Sing happy birthday song twice.
Yes.
That's how long you should be washing your hands. Not speed through. Brian, I know you're out there.
Brian?
We called you out last time, Brian.
Calling you out again.
Brian, 2 times. Don't rush through that song. Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday to you.
That's speed.
That speed.
Brian.
No faster, no
Happy
slower.
birthday to Brian. That speed.
Do not touch your face. Actually, I saw this tip.
That's the worst
So
one.
this-
I hate that
So
one.
this is something that...
because I touch my face all the
Yes,
time.
I think everyone does. And I actually saw this really good tip. Take it if you want it, but you don't necessarily have to. But I think that it would be helpful for a lot of people to try out something like this. After you wash your hands, take an onion, cut it in half.
Put your hands in the onion.
Put your fingertips on the onion, and it will help you realize how much you touch your face. Because every time that you reach your hand up, you're going to smell it, and you'll recognize... It's not necessarily going to stop you from doing it, but
When I was little, I put my fingers in lemon juice to stop me from biting my nails.
I think... Well, see...
Yeah, but lemon juice tastes
If I were to do that, I would just probably bite them more. I would
your
love
nails
yeah.
wouldn't exist anymore.
No, I wouldn't have any nails. I love my lemon juice. I'm
But
drinking it right now.
It didn't work. I still bite my nails. It's bad.
It's kind of funny that we have to just give general hygiene.
Yeah, I know. It's sad to be like, hey guys, try not to like put your hands in your mouth.
Yeah. Here's another thing. It is possible, and I think there is evidence out here now that it does transfer via stool. So when you take a number
So
2,
don't touch each other's poop.
when you drop a deuce, don't touch your tooth.
What?
That's my slogan. Get
Wash
it?
your hands after you wipe, you animals. Good God.
Don't wipe with your hands.
Don't use poop as shampoo.
Don't tell me what to do.
In the U.S., we are seeing broad sweeping rollouts of different sorts of shutdowns. In particular, airports are crammed and confused right now as Trump has announced that he's going to be cutting off all travel to and from Europe, excluding U.S. citizens and green card holders. Nike closes its stores across the U.S. and abroad, as well as Apple. On the 14th, the White House task force updated that they were going to be passing the bipartisan support bill. This has been something that has been rolling out in order to alleviate a lot of people's concerns about not being able to go into work. Trump actually said during that update that he believes that the press has been relatively fair towards him, which is something new coming from him. And I think that this sort of global tragedy, while yes, there are some news outlets that are still being extreme, it has brought a lot of people together, and we're seeing a lot of bipartisan support. In particular, Trump making that tweet saying that we're going to be, he wants everybody to be supporting. What this bill is going to do is ensure paid sick and family medical leave, free testing for anybody who needs to get this test, small business support for businesses that are damaged as a result of loss of sales or employment. Some other things that happened during that, Trump declared a national state of emergency, which allows for $50 billion to be available for the coronavirus outbreak. What he was saying is that they're going to be rolling out about 5 million tests within a month. We saw during that, and again today, that there was a great sort of deal made with a lot of these private business owners.
Yeah, there's a bunch of CEOs of a bunch of big, mainly
Target,
like
Walmart,
retailers,
Walgreens, and they're going to be, and we heard about this again today, is they're going to be setting up these drive-through sort of testing areas for individuals, and Fauci had also mentioned today potentially some walk-through ones, in order to allow for people to be tested out of their cars. That way it limits exposure. So
there's a bunch of like all in their parking lots of these big retailers.
Yes. And so we've seen in the U.S. in particular, and the U.S. has faced a lot of criticism for just being very slow to roll out these tests. I know it's been all over the news, and I know a lot of people personally who have been sick, felt that they needed to get testing, tested negative for the flu and for strep, gone to a location and asked for testing and then been denied testing. And that has been largely in part to the fact that we just don't have a lot of tests right now. So we're hoping within the next week to have a better estimate of exactly how many cases are developing. Some other things that we've seen is a lot of schools are closing. High schools are closing. Middle schools are closing. I know my family is all out of school. Ohio is saying that they might be closing down school for the remainder of the year.
Wow.
Stuff is getting a little bit crazy out there. And be aware that in places like New York City, we have to be aware that there's 1.1 students that live in poverty. And this is not just in New York.
1.1 million
Students that live in poverty. And this is going to be really important when students start getting pulled out of school. For a lot of these kids, I saw this quote. It says that school is a city that we provide for kids. For a lot of these kids, this is their life. Being in school that allows them to have a community. And when you pull people out, there's 1.1 million students in New York alone that live in poverty, and 114,000 of them are homeless. So when you start pulling kids out of school, it really kind of creates a lot of stress. And so those humanitarian efforts are going to be incredibly necessary moving forward, not just in New York, but in all major cities. We have a large homeless population in a lot of major cities, and those people are also going to need to be cared for. So
a good rule of thumb is if you're going to go to the store and spend $200 on toilet paper and hand sanitizer, just donate it, because you're wasting everyone's time by buying toilet paper and hand sanitizer.
I think that is an important thing to point out, is this type of crisis calls for...
It's a cough. You don't need toilet paper for a cough. Unless...
So this is a cool story. While we're talking about kind of like highlights and seeing people just at their best right now, there's this 17-year-old who created a website tracking coronavirus cases, and it is now a vital global resource. That's the headline. You can go to this website. It's ncov2019.live. Again, that is ncov2019.live. This kid is 17 years old. He's a high school junior from Mercer Island outside Seattle. His name is Avi Schiffman. And
it's a nice website.
This website is awesome.
Yeah, it's really
go check
nice.
it out. And
wow.
I mean, shout out to this kid for kind of seeing an issue within his community and being like, I'm going to make a difference. This kid is a genius. I went and added him on LinkedIn, tried to, because he sounds like a baller. He's awesome. I want to have him on here. Like I reached out to him. I was like, dude, you got to come on the show. Like you're sick. So if you ever hear this, shout out to you, Avi Schiffman, for really making a difference in your community, putting out a great resource that I think a lot of people need. Let's see it like developed into an app or something as we're kind of going forward. But it's really cool to see. And I think in wrapping up, I think it's important to realize that we're watching history unfold before our eyes. This is the first global pandemic in the modern age of technology. And as so, there's a lot of unprecedented things that we're seeing occur. We're seeing social media play a huge role in both panic and awareness. Yeah. For the first time, we're kind of hearing from people who are affected by diseases like this in a way that maybe a lot of people didn't see before. And I think it's going to help raise global awareness for things like washing your hands, general hygiene. The reality is, for a lot of people, they are always at risk for these types of things. And just because now there's a global pandemic that's kind of sweeping through, it doesn't necessarily mean that these aren't very real realities for people on a daily basis, particularly people with underlying health issues, immunocompromisation, or old age. And we need to be aware all the time, not just when there's a global pandemic, to be washing our hands and having good hygiene and really taking care of people within our community. Yep. On top of that, we're seeing a whole lot of global camaraderie. In places like Italy, we see people singing off of balconies. In the US, we see bipartisan support pushing through bills. And I think, while yes, epidemics and pandemics do bring out the worst in humanity, it also gives a platform for a lot of people to shine. And we do get to see a lot of great characteristics and qualities in people. So I would encourage everyone, if you're listening to this, honestly, be your best person. we're all in this together. And as in the days and weeks moving ahead, there's going to be a lot of confusion. There's going to be a lot of kind of scary things that come up. But make sure that you're recognizing what your risk is, mitigating the risk of those around you, and really just doing your best to be a good citizen. And we're going to get through this together. And, we're all in this. We're all in this together.
Oh my goodness. No. Yeah. And then I think it's safe to say, like, from a content side of things, we're going to continue watching this. We don't know how, like, who knows what'll happen this week. Maybe it'll all die down, or maybe it'll be like crazy, insane, like quarantine lockdown.
It's not dying down.
Well, what I'm saying is we don't know what's going to happen, so we're definitely going to watch it, and we're going to keep you guys updated and let you know what's going on. We would like to get to other content eventually, but this stuff is so serious right now, and people need to be enlightened that we're going to keep watching it, and if we feel like we need to keep reporting on it, we will.
Yeah. Another thing, though, is we don't really want to beat the dead horse. Like, we kind of...
But I don't think we are. I don't think we're trying to. We're not trying. Yeah, it's not really dead yet. It's just starting.
Also, give us input. Like, tell us if you want to keep hearing dedicated episodes to Corona, or you just want to hear snippets every week on top of whatever our topic is.
Things are going to look very different, not only in America, but in the entire world over the following weeks. And so there's probably going to be a lot of time where we're all just kind of sitting around chilling. So if you want to hear other material and take your mind off the coronavirus, let us know. We can do we got other great material planned and lined up that we're super excited for. Maybe we just need a quick distraction from all of this mayhem.
This podcast is not meant to solely focus on coronavirus. We just happened to start it when the coronavirus was a big thing. And we had a few people that were like, isn't this about coronavirus? Are you doing anything else? And we were like, it's actually not about coronavirus, but it's just the coronavirus is just kind of taking over everyone's lives right now, that we might as well talk about it.
For anyone out there who has these underlying health issues or might be predisposed to be at a higher risk, please let people know. There's a lot of unawareness in the world, and a lot of people don't necessarily know the risk that they put people in. And it's really important that, one, if you're somebody that is going to be fine, if you're somebody that this doesn't impact in a drastic way, keep your mind and your ears open. Listen to the voices around you. Listen to the people telling you what it is that they need in order to keep them safe, and what it is that you can do in order to reduce the risk for everybody as a whole. Don't be going out to the bars. We're saying this again. Don't be socially gathering in large groups. Be aware. Be mindful and help one another out.
Bowling can wait, Brian.
Yeah,
We'll
Brian.
go bowling later.
I bet you Brian likes duck pin bowling. He doesn't even like regular bowling.
He's the walls, though. He's the little guardrails, though.
Brian uses bumpers.
I don't know who this Brian is that we're talking about, but I like making sure Brian knows.
We should make Brian just like the character of
Brian
the whole
is
podcast.
the character already.
Brian sucks.
Every episode, we just bring him up.
You know that meme where it's like, this is Bob. Bob does this. Yeah. Bob doesn't panic. Be like Bob. Brian is the opposite. Yeah. This is Brian. Brian does not wash his hands.
Come on, Brian.
Brian goes bowling during pandemics. Don't be like Brian.
Yeah. Anyways,
if you're out there and listening and you would like to hear something different from us, or, just want to get in touch with us in general, feel free to email us at potionsclasspodcast@gmail.com. We're on Twitter at potionsclasspod. Our Instagram is potionsclasspodcast. As long as you just type in Potions Class Podcast, you're probably going to find us. If you like what you heard today, be sure to check out podcastbyjoe.com. We've got a brand new blog that is actually going to be featured on podcastbyjoe.com. It's called the Potions Class blog. You can just go online to www.podcastbyjoe.com/potions class, correct?
Yep.
And you're going to find every single week that we put out an episode, we are going to put out a blog post that kind of just covers all of the main points. We got some great sources on there, some pictures here and there if they're warranted, maybe a chart. There's going to be a chart for this one. We're going to be talking about flattening the curve. There's going to be a chart on flattening the curve. You can share that information with your family and friends. Let's make sure that we're not spreading misinformation. Let's be honest. Let's say what's going on, look at the numbers, and not incite fear and panic where it is not due.
Yeah, the blog is super cool. There's going to be, like Elliot said, a bunch of resources there. Elliot's handwritten notes are going to be on there, which is kind of cool.
They're really confusing.
Both the audio version and the video version of this are going to be there as well. We are also on YouTube now, which is cool. So if you guys want to find us on YouTube, feel free. You can find us there as well. Just Potions Class Podcast, and we'll come up. And And yeah, we'll have a bunch of extra resources if you like what you heard and want to kind of learn more. We'll have all of the, the things we cited in the episodes and everything.
And on that website, there's also a little link for subscription. You can sign up for our email. We're not going to spam you, I promise. We are not going to annoy you. All we're going to do is let you know, hey, there's a new episode out, and if we ever feel like sending out some here's some citations or anything like that, and it just gives you a way to get in contact with us. So we're going to send that out to you weekly, once a week, or it's what we're just going to shoot for. So don't worry, it's not going to clog up your email. It's just in order to kind of keep you informed. And if you want to check out the Outside Line with Eric, we're going to have a couple new great episodes coming out.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because of everything unfolding. And I think the NASCAR season is suspended, right?
So far it's 2 weeks postponement.
2 weeks.
So it's probably going to be more, let's be honest, but we'll
probably.
see.
Yeah, we'll see. But we're going to have some fun things.
Thank you so much for listening to Potions Class. Next week, what are we doing next week?
I don't know. We'll find out.
We've got a lot of great material planned, and I'm so excited to get to it, and it's building up inside of me. I want to share this information so badly, but at some point we're going to be doing a series on caffeine. We're going to kind of see what happens over the next week. We'll make a decision around probably next Wednesday, Thursday, and we'll post something about it on our socials. We'll let you know what's coming up. We might be doing another episode on coronavirus, just keeping you up to date. If not, we're going to be doing an episode on caffeine, and what we'll probably do is just do a 10-15 minute plug in the beginning with a quick update. So,
Yep.
All right. Have a good one.